Well, right now, a Massachusetts teenager found guilty of causing a deadly car crash because he was texting while driving. It's the first of its kind in the state and one of the first sentences we've seen really in the country, Rick. So it's one of the reasons why we're taking a closer look at this.
Absolutely. And this verdict handed down just today in the case of Aaron DeVoe, guilty, as you said, of negligent operation of a motor vehicle. This involved a terrible head-on collision in February of last year between DeVoe and two people who were driving in another car, one of whom was killed, the other seriously injured. DeVoe testified in his own defense, and he was asked what he remembers about the crash. He said that he swerved into the other lane because he suddenly realized that he was getting too close to the car in front of him. Listen.
I remember that day. Yes, I remember that.
Do you remember that part?
Yes, I do.
Right.
The picture's right there.
When you came up on the car that was in front of you, were you looking down at your lap?
No, I was not.
Were you looking out the window?
No, I was not.
Were you looking at your cell phone?
No, I was not.
You just were distracted.
I was just distracted.
Prosecutors had shown the jury records that DeVoe had written or received almost 200 texts the day of the accident, both before and after. But DeVoe says that none of them took place while he was actually behind the wheel. At the time of the crash, the jury obviously did not believe him. He has just been sentenced. He faced a possible 4 years in prison. We understand, just coming in from the courtroom, that Aaron DeVoe gets 1 year in prison for this conviction. Back to you, Jenna.
I think we're still trying to confirm that as well. A few different headlines coming from that courtroom, Rick. Thank you very much for that, but possible several years. With us now, Rachel Self, a criminal defense attorney, and Joey Jackson, a criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. Rachel, you also heard your sentence. We're working on confirming that with the court. It surprises you, though, that the prosecution was successful here. Why is that?
Well, because ultimately speaking, the charge, you need to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the texting was happening while the accident actually occurred. But under the statute, negligent operation, you need to show that your behavior was negligent enough that it might have resulted in the death of someone and then ultimately somebody died. And I think that they might have hinged it on that. The jury yesterday asked for a re-instruction on negligent operation, and they only deliberated for a little while on this. So I think the prosecutor did a great job.
Joey, we're just getting word in that Aaron DeVoe was sentenced to 2.5 years in jail, but he will serve 1 full year behind bars. What's your reaction just to this story overall, Joey, and what it means just legally, the legal ramifications around the country?
Well, you know, legally speaking, Jen, I think it means that there'll be less people who are texting. Why? Because one of the things that the law does, Jen, is it has a deterrent effect, not only on the individual to prevent that specific individual, in this case Mr. DeVoe, from doing this again, but to prevent others from doing it again. And remember, we don't have to, in this particular state, under this state law, you don't have to show any intent, right? Normally we look and someone's dead and you have to show they intended to do it. Here, all you have to show is that someone acted negligently, right? They were careless and they were not being careful or attentive, or you have to show that they were acting recklessly, that is, they consciously disregarded a risk, knew what they were doing could be wrong and could result in a calamity, but they did it anyway. So I think the takeaway from this, Jenna, is that it will prevent others who are thinking about texting from doing so.
You know, one would hope, Joey, but I'm curious, going back to the points you were making about what they had to prove for this to be actually motor vehicle homicide. Can someone be, you know, fiddling with the radio, doing their makeup, trying to drink a cup of coffee? I mean, how is texting different than some of these other activities one could do in a car, or maybe how is it the same?
You know, it's such a wonderful point that you're making, because there are a number of other activities that are very similar, right, Jenna? Because whether it is you're fiddling with the radio or makeup or doing your hair, it raises the same issue, and that is you're being distracted. The problem here, however, is there's a specific state law that identifies texting as something that is particularly dangerous and particularly a matter which the legislature had to take hold of to do something about. So I think it could lead to those parade of horribles, that is maybe legislation along the lines of a distraction in general as being criminalized, and that's something we'll have to look for in the future, not only by Massachusetts, Jenna, but by other states as well.
Rachel, do you see that in the future?
Absolutely. I agree with Joey completely, and I think that your point was a very valid one, but the bottom line is we have a law here that says you're not allowed to text and drive. The same way you have a law that says you're not allowed to drink and drive or do drugs and drive. Everyone recognizes that this is an incredibly dangerous thing. And when you're sitting in traffic, everyone looks around. You look around at every other car, somebody's texting and driving.
Well, that's true.
And so I'm really hoping, I'm really hoping that they do come down with legislation. And while it might be, as Joey said, a parade of horribles, I think that the legislative intent behind the statute shouldn't be ignored. And this is a dangerous thing, and people shouldn't be doing it. And a father of 3 was killed here.
That's right. And well, we should also mention that in Massachusetts, it's illegal for a teenager to actually hold a phone, have a phone in the car.
Yes.
If you're under the age of 18, that's the law
Yes.
as well. And this phone was in the front seat with him. So we'll continue to watch to see the ramifications. Thank you to you both for your time today.
Good to see you, Jenna. Take
Thank
care,
you.
Rachel.
Good to see you. Bye.
Right now, how would you like a little good news for a change? The Dow. Take a look at the numbers.